All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Lunch and Learn. I am Jeremy, as you all have seen many times over, and I will be leading our call today. Happy to answer any questions that we may have. So if you have anything, please feel free to start typing them up in the Q&A, and I'd be happy to discuss. While I'll give everyone a chance to join in and type any questions they have, I'll go over some of the usual stuff. Check out our YouTube channel. YouTube channel's got all of our lunch and learns. When we have lunch and learns, we post those up there, as well as other video content. So if you're curious to check out some things, or even if you have some ideas to give to us about content you'd like us to put up there, you can always let us know. And we always like to try to put new things out there depending on what's going on. And especially when we have interesting updates or very unique things, we can show some of that kind of stuff as well. Then we've got our solutions marketplace. This is at marketplace.decisions.com. Lots of great accelerators and other applications and things that you can grab. If you're curious about any of those kinds of things, you can easily try some things out and open up some different, some cool things there. So if you're curious about that, check that out, marketplace.decisions.com. And last but not least, we have our project roadmap. Our project roadmap reviews and as well as a few other events, I guess, but not just the roadmap. But this is every other Tuesday. Great place to check out if you have any questions or are looking forward to some of the potential upcoming events and things that we have. You can check that out. We also have a couple other webinars, even just this month. So if you're curious or interested in any of those, decisions.com/events has those webinars you can go to check out. There's one on July 17th. This one is actually new. I don't think this was up here for not too long, but looking at the core capabilities of the rules engine and things like that. And then there's one, and this is on the 17th. Yeah, on the 17th. Then there's one on the 24th where Foster's is going to show off decisions and how they've used it. So two things coming up this month if you're curious, as well as our biweekly, which I think is next Tuesday is the next one. So if you're interested in either of those, decisions.com/events, and you can check those out. With that in mind, we will go ahead and start on our questions. So if you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A. Otherwise, we can discuss anything else. First question we have, though, is from Dong Mei, so I will address that. I'll let you speak if you have to add anything or want to add any clarifications or anything. I'll read the question, and that question is, can you show me an example to call JavaScript on a page?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me see here.
Yeah, I'm thinking how to add a JavaScript in a page, decisions page.
Yes.
So I wonder how I can do that.
Yeah, so if you have some of the limitations that at least I personally don't have is actually having like a real script and everything. But you can easily just add, there's an actual like custom script that you can add when you go to add a page in Decisions. If you go to create page, there is a JavaScript control section that you can do. So you can actually add it directly from here. And this just simply provides, obviously the name and everything, and then you can just input the file directly into this with whatever your JavaScript control, file and everything that you have is there.
So this JS file, I look into the web page, decision training web page. It says you have to have some like a listening or some class. That's a or any JS file is kind of what kind of JS file it should be in here. So if I just say, let's say JavaScript say alert, hello world, that will be okay here.
I think so. I don't know if there's any. I can look up. Maybe if Jasmine, if you can check if our documentation has anything that calls out the specifics of what can or can't be used in our JavaScript controls. But I'm not 100% sure if they're what the limitations are on what can be in this file. So if you give it a minute, maybe Jasmine will find if there's anything on that. But otherwise, if I had something,
Yeah, I just wonder what kind of JS file. Is it just a regular JavaScript language here? It's fine. It's okay. The link in the chat, that is a page I found some JavaScript JS file format in your
Yeah.
website. That is that is not what I'm thinking. The JavaScript.
What, so then maybe if this
So
isn't exactly what you're
here,
looking for.
yeah, so the copy. It does. I don't think I want this like very complex. I just like a very simple code like alert hello world. How I can do that?
Hmm. I guess if what you're looking for is more like specifically how to write the JavaScript or like how to make a good
How make it
example.
work on the page on the yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're looking more for, I guess, the specifics of what this could all like entail,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably better off reaching out to support, or maybe even your CSM can put you in contact with like a developer that has more experience with the specifics of JavaScript. Um,
Okay.
because outside of this, all you need is to, if you can create the actual like JavaScript itself, once you actually create that and save it in here, you can
Mm-hmm.
easily find it on the actual, that's a form, not a page. Why do I have a form there? Um, you can easily find it. There's a JS controls section here that you have.
Yeah.
So if you've created a JS controls, then you should have like that
Yeah.
control in there.
I
And
yeah
then
had
from there,
that.
just add it.
Yeah.
So anything beyond that is just the actual like syntax and writing of a JavaScript control. That I don't have any experience with, unfortunately. I don't think that,
Okay.
as far as
So
I know,
yes.
anyone on the training team has extensive experience with, maybe a little bit of experience with it. But if you
Okay.
want more help on like to get some specific action or something that you're looking for, that'll probably have to come from either
Okay.
support or through your CSM to get more like a
Yeah.
more
That's fine.
directed help on that part.
Yeah. I just wish I can see an example how they made it. Okay. That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Can I continue? Ask another question.
So you have another question? I don't have any other questions at the moment. If you
Yeah,
have another, you'd
okay.
like to ask.
So the reason I'm thinking about JavaScript, actually the purpose is I try to convert a web page to a PDF file. Then I found there's a JavaScript. Actually, it's very easy to on HTML page. I can click a button called JavaScript. Then it changes the web page directly to PDF file. I can do that on outside the decision. Very
Hmm.
simple. But inside decision, that's why I try to call that. But is there any other way to easy to do like make the decisions web page directly convert it to PDF file? Is there a way to do that?
So you're looking like if I have some kind of page or
Yeah,
view,
a
like you
new
want to whole,
page.
turn this whole thing into a PDF.
Yes, yes. Is there any way to do inside decision or yeah, that's why I try to code JavaScript on the page because that will work if I can code it there. But I wonder, yeah, maybe inside the decisions you already have something to do with it.
I know you can easily do things like just simple reports.
Simple report.
That's easy. Like I
Yeah, I
can do the report,
remember.
but that, obviously that's not the whole page.
Yeah, I remember when I do the training, we can do
It
the
lets people do
PDF
that.
from form transfer. Yeah, fill the PDF. Then we have the PDF file
Right.
saved to our folder, something like that. But I just want to like the whole web page, whatever it is showing on the web page, it maybe has some form, maybe have some report, maybe have some image, but just transfer the whole page to PDF.
Right. Let me see here. I don't know if there'd be any like. I forgot I did all that last week.
Yeah, like this new version view is looks really good.
Yeah,
Nice.
I like it too.
Looks nice.
Very
But
nice.
sometimes I feel it's weird on the form. When in this floor I have a form. Somehow I lost the button, like the edit the form. I think after upgrade
Oh,
that's a
like up here
problem.
when you click on the
Yeah,
form,
yeah. Sometimes that
shouldn't
button
be there.
is missing. But I have to close this one, then then reopen it, then I can see.
But like this, sometimes you don't have it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's really interesting. That sounds just like a is if it appears after you close and reopen it, that sounds like some kind of server delay issue thing.
Uh,
Because usually sometimes that'll happen to me and I just have to like if I have to close and reclose things, I might just have to like restart or something like that. And it works like just fine for a while. Or like if that happens on our training servers, usually that's just because there's a lot of people working on it and it gets slowed for a moment, and so then this just doesn't load. And then
uh,
sometimes just like less people working or restarting is what fixes that. That's just what it sounds like to me at least.
Yeah, I feel after this upgrade, I see it before, almost never see it. It is HTML data. Maybe I can put
You
my
might be able to.
JavaScript code in the HTML data.
Yes, you might be able to. There's a few different things you could probably do with HTML stuff because you could easily turn HTML into a PDF. Um, pages, where's the page data or something? I swear there was a page data step. Another thing maybe integration, internal services. Here. We have a page service. There might be. Let's see if there's anything. If there's anything in the page service, only page related thing I see. Um, would be create. Maybe like get, but I don't know what this would get. Page context ID. I don't think nothing of these are really standing out to me. I thought maybe you could get like page information from this and then maybe transfer that, but
Mhm.
nothing here is really sticking out as one of those exactly what you're looking for here.
Yeah, I didn't see any even about PDF or something
Yeah,
like
nothing sounds. I was even seeing if I could get the like the page data first from some page and then you could change that into a PDF. That's what I was
PDF, get
trying
a
to look at,
PDF
but
control page count. Oh, that's okay.
um, page variables, it's Page designer makes sense. Yeah, I think where you're heading is the best bet if you can get that like JavaScript thing figured out, the
Uh-huh.
specifics of that. I think that will probably be your
Yeah.
option. Um,
Okay. So I'll
yes,
go
there
that
are
way.
things within here that you can convert stuff like HTML to PDF, so you can try doing stuff with that as well.
Oh,
If you want to
oh,
try it on the steps first before you mess with the JavaScript, if you
yeah.
have stuff within HTML, you might be able to just do that first, because then you can just take
Mm,
in HTML and a couple other things like the name of the file and stuff like that. And then this should just convert it into a PDF for you.
mm,
So if that works, then you might not even have to worry about your JavaScript stuff. That does
yeah,
exactly what you're looking
yeah.
for.
I can try that. Yeah. That's good. Good to know that.
And then
Okay.
you can maybe even just have like a button on your um, page or something that would trigger that if you want it to trigger off of like someone clicking on something.
Mm-hmm. Then change the whole page to PDF.
Yeah,
This HTML actually the page, the decisions page, it is the HTML, right? Is that
I
so
think
HTML?
so. I believe
Yes.
so, but I'm not 100%.
But when it can publish to the browser, I believe it is convert to HTML.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can look into that. That's good suggestion.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay. We've got another question from Robin, so I will move on to that question next. Question is, will you show me how to gather values in fields on an initial form and create a list for a dropdown on a following form? Sure. So can I just quickly clarify before I jump into this? You're talking about two separate forms, and you want the outputs of one form to populate the dropdown of a second form?
Right. Yeah. So what happens is we're the initial submission is a requester, and they're specifying the people that are within the process, like a sponsor, unit head, that sort of thing. And
Hmm.
later on, the people that are pushed tasks will be able to pin, so they'll be able to push it back to the push a question to the sponsor, or push a question to the unit head requester. So I would just like to be able to gather that information. I can make a list out of it, but I'm having a hard time getting it to populate and correctly on the second form. So I just thought I might just ask you for like best practices maybe of doing it for the entire process.
Sure. So, in your original form, is it coming out as a list, or like is it a bunch of separate things that you need to compile into a list?
A bunch of separate things to compile into a list.
Okay.
Yes.
So, what you could do within this, depending on how your data is coming out, um, let me just open this again. I'm just going to do this as an example instead of building a whole form, but let's just pretend that this is where like your different data elements coming from a form. Because that part doesn't change that much. The idea is
Right.
we got some kind
Okay.
of form outputting a bunch of different individual elements, right?
Hmm.
And then we do have some other form here that we need to be able to take in that's going to have a drop down on it. So let me just add a drop down here. This is a, there we go. We'll just do that. Oh, I need to change type too. Make this strings, whatever type, data name. So what you'll want for your dropdown on your other form is you need strings, you need the input source to be a data name. Because you could have it either come from a flow, which is like a flow that you build inside the form. That doesn't sound like what you need. And static would be if you like it's completely static, which is obviously not what you're looking for, since you want it to come from the other elements that are chosen. But if you just have a data name, and I'll call this list of dropdowns, whatever, it's just whatever that information is coming in as, then what'll happen is on the form, it's going to have a list, right? So now I have a list that's going to be all of the items that I want to grab from. And so then I can just simply use some kind of variation of, we have like add item to list steps that you could use. So you could use like add item to list to grab your individual items. You also have the ability to use grab anything that has like a list as an input. Either it through something like this, or even if it's like this has a list of strings. If you do build array, it'll expand that list into like a single item, and you can individually add multiple items to it by just clicking the plus icon, and you'll add more. So if this is a little bit less useful if we have like a whole bunch of these things, like maybe you have like 20 items that they could have on that first form, then obviously you would have to do this 20 times so it could fill up really quick. But if or it'd be like a little annoying, I guess you could say, if you're trying to add like a bunch of items at a time. And so something like that could become a little bit tedious if you have a bunch of different like separate inputs. But if you're trying to like combine all of your inputs into one list, then it's something like this is going to be more potentially useful. Join strings, I think that's not what I'm looking for. Where are the other list steps?
I've done similar steps. I think that maybe I'm trying too many things at once and confusing myself. But I
Yes.
appreciate. I think what you've given me will be very helpful.
Yeah.
in
And then there's
organizing
another
my
thing
thoughts.
too that sometimes we'll use if they're trying to add a list. You can look up stuff about list builders.
Mhm.
And you could even look at our step library information for how to use the list builder step specifically. But this is another way you could use this to just build up a list of strings, and then there's steps that you could use to add that up, and you can add those things together as well. So yeah, it's really just either using, you might be able to do it with steps if it's a little bit like it's not too large of a possibility. You might even just be able to use build array on one thing and to pass each of those items. So then I can grab the first one could be item 1, and then the second one can come from item 2, and then the third one can come from item 3, for example. And then when I like run this, if I let's just play some dummy data in here, and say like someone fills out the first 2 items and they don't fill out the second one, and then we run this through. I don't need a selected item, and I can remove this last one, and then I run this. When my form pops up, my dropdown is going to have and I think that does create an empty space if it's null. So you might maybe you'd have to account for that so you don't have blank spaces if one's blank. So that you might need some logic in here to remove like null decisions if someone didn't fill out a space, if that's possible in your use case. So that I don't get an empty space here, because I guess that's the only downside to what I just did with the like add items and stuff like that. But otherwise, you could easily still have that populate based on the inputs from there when you build array to grab that.
Great, thank you.
All right, got another one. It says, if you have a sub dialog button on a form that saves the data, how do you clear the fields after the save so you can save another record? Good question. I'll let you talk if you have anything to add while I put this out here. Okay. Grab some dummy stuff up here real quick. Right.
That's fine.
All right.
It's enough.
Yep. Okay. So the key here, so the idea is you want, like, someone's filling this out, they hit save data, you want to save those 3 things to the database, and then to clear those things out so that they can save data, like start a new set to save data, right?
Correct.
So I'm gonna uncheck use legacy, and I'm gonna start this flow here. And really, it's just you're gonna have your whatever your save step is. I'm just gonna throw this here and say this is what I'm gonna use to save data into it. And then from here, you can just use the form rules. So even in a just like you would with an active form flow, you can use form rules inside a sub dialog flow that has like the clear validation, set validations, those kinds of things. And so what you could do here is do like a set
Set
control
control.
value.
So I
And
couldn't get to the set control because it's not available unless you go through form rules.
correct. I think you
Ah,
should be able to search for it as
no.
well. Oh, of course, I'm going to have a bunch of big things. Yeah, set control value should be
Yeah, but
searchable as well.
but I think what I did was in the previous form before you got into this flow, if you can just go back there. Right there, on the save button, hit the save button, and
Mhm.
then I chose, you took off use legacy. My
Yes,
button had, let me just
with
show
use
you
legacy
really.
checked.
I'm just going to check right now. If I go into this form, my save button has an, yes, it is, and it has edit flow ID right below it. And that's what I use to create the save process. So I created a flow inside of this form to do the saving. And I'm not
Yes.
sure that was right or wrong. And I put a bunch of inputs and because the only thing that's needed to save this particular form is the information on the form and let's say a primary key value, okay, which I've supplied through an input. You know, like if you hit set up input data and you just put like the primary key value there. So that plus all the information on the form is the only thing that's required to save it, which is the primary key and obviously some data. So what I did was, I don't know if I did it right, but I made a edit flow ID and I made a flow that saves the data from the form by passing in all the inputs that I need, the amount, in your case, the numbers, the text, and the dropdown example. So I was passing those in, mapping them to the form as flow inputs.
Yes.
So, right. So now the flow has input from the form, if you will, and the save happens and the save works just fine. And then after the save finishes, I wanted to clear the form, but I couldn't get to the clear button or the clear thing. But then you went to, let me just see if it works. You went to all steps. You went to, um, where was the area that you went?
Yeah. And under all, there should be form rules section,
Form rules. That's what it was.
but it's not in this one actually. So here's the reason, and this is just something related to what the how sub dialogues worked in older versions of decisions. So we have this use legacy because of the way that sub dialogues worked in older versions, and I don't remember what like how far back that went, but in older versions, there was one way of using sub dialogues, and if you upgraded to the current version or whatever, like later versions from something that
Mm-hmm.
used the old sub dialogues, then it could cause a lot of breakage issues and the sub dialogues wouldn't work anymore. So we have to have this use legacy option to prevent those older versions from breaking. And
Okay.
part of that is those older versions that use the legacy flow don't have access to some things like the form rules. And so form rules
Right.
are actually not available in this type of flow. Anything after like anything you create, if you're trying to use a sub dialog, you're going to want to uncheck use legacy and build it from there because it's going to have the full power that sub dialogs have in the
Ah,
current versions of
right.
decision.
Because now there's a start and there's an end where there was this cancel and this
Yeah,
other. Yeah, I didn't understand what that was. Okay, so
yeah,
so you got to take that off and then build
yep.
it that way. And then
Uncheck it and build from here.
once you do your save, then obviously you'll be able to do a clear or a set control, I should
Correct.
say.
Set control and just set them as null
Got it.
and clear
That's
the
why I
data
couldn't
inside
see
them.
it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. Yeah.
That's great.
Unfortunately,
Thank
I
you.
think it's just a limitation. We have to have that checked for anyone upgrading from old versions that used old sub dialogues.
Okay. That's fair enough.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. All right.
Is there anybody else or?
Currently that was the last question on the list of questions for now.
So were you the same one that helped me on Friday trying to get the primary key out of an insert query?
Yes.
So I think you answered me back, and I'm not sure if this is the right forum to talk about it, but you said that you couldn't do it because you have no access to the database's primary key once it was cut. And then I answered back and I said, if you use and I think you told me at the very end, did you use a table integration? And I said no, but then over the weekend, I went back and I did use a table integration, and it does have an output and it does have the primary key
Mm-hmm.
as the output. And I was like, oh, this is great. So exactly the primary key of the record that I'm trying to insert, it comes out, and then you can use that downstream. Then I said, okay, what happens if I want to do an update, right? I'm feeding in the information to be updated. I guess the answer, and I think I figured this out, but I think the answer is if I'm feeding in something to update, I must be having to feed in the primary key to do the update, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't know. Actually, you could feed in, I was trying to do an update and trying to determine what the primary key was so that I could use it downstream that I was doing the update on. And I was feeding it two pieces of information. So with those two pieces of information, it's unique. I'm able to do my update, but again, it doesn't output the primary key or the field that holds the primary key so that I could use it downstream. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but
Yeah, so even on an update, it doesn't output the data, I guess.
no. And I used the selective update. I tried update values for
Yeah, those are the three that I grabbed here. Yeah, I
remind
think
you
on
it's an external database too, so that's maybe part of the
yeah.
problem.
No, but even it doesn't actually output. It just outputs anything if it fails. But I guess what you still technically, if you're trying to update this, you have to feed it the item. Like it has to get the inputs for whatever it was that it's getting
Correct.
updated. So that is
Correct.
where you have the primary key anyway in the first place.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to output the data because it needs that data as an input in the first place. So wherever it's
But
coming
what
from
happens if
first,
your update was two fields that are unique, or even one field like email address, right? It's unique. So you do an update where, so you say, insert into this, update this table where email address equals this, and it's a unique email address. But yet you still need the primary key of the table because it's kind of a
yeah,
mood. I think
I know what you
think I
mean.
figured out. I think I figured it out because at the very beginning of the flow, I did a create data step and I polled the table to verify there was anything in it. And if there
Yeah,
was, then I'm going to do an update. If there's not, I'm going to do an insert. So when I polled the table, I did a create data on the primary key. So that's how I resolved it. And then
yeah.
going down the line. By the way, the last person who asked for how to do that gather fields
Hmm.
and to make a drop down, you had that little space in between.
Yeah,
Um, I did it a slightly different way and it may help her. I'm not sure if she's still listening.
yeah.
Um,
That would be great. I'm still here.
um,
I'm a
I,
newbie. I have something else to learn.
I did an in string. In other words, I grabbed the fields. I had a bunch of check boxes on a form and I wanted to know if it was the first, the third, the fifth, which ones did they check? So every time it passed through, I would create data and add to a string another value, like, 1, 3, 5. And then I use that as the source of a query for the dropdown by saying, select all, we'll call it departments, if you will, where the department ID is 1,3,5. And that would only load the 3 checkbox. There could have been 8 checkboxes on the form before, but when I got to my second form, the dropdown only contained 3 items, the first, the third, and the fifth. I'm not sure if that helps you anymore. But it was a different way of doing it where I used, there's a function called inString in SQL,
Mhm.
which says, select star from, this table where departments equals departments in parentheses 1,3,5, close the parentheses. And with that, you'll get just the departments that have 1, 3, and 5 in it. So I figured I could make a string as I'm checking these boxes, and I go to my second form. It created a string that said 1,3,5, and I use that as the input to the dropdown. And then the dropdown selected everything from departments where it was in 1,3,5, and then therefore only 3 departments in the dropdown showed up with no space in between.
Mm. Cool. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so it sounds like you had like a database that string referred to pull the data from, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that would definitely work if you had the output from your first form could then reach to a database to get different information and then input that into your second form.
And that's what we're going into Banner, and I've pulled the information from there. So that might be a way to go. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yep, of course. All right. Last chance for anyone else if we have any other questions. Currently, we are all out. All right. I'm not seeing anything else. So we will go ahead and end our lunch and learn for the day. Later this afternoon, we'll get this posted on YouTube in case anyone wants to refer back and remember anything that was discussed. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and end for today. We've got Gregory and myself alternating the rest of this week. So we will see you all at the next lunch and learn. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a great one.
You.